Hi, I'm Travis. I was a career diplomat with the US Department of State for almost 7 years. And for most of that time, I worked abroad as a visa officer, where I interviewed tens of thousands of visa applicants from all over the world. And since leaving the State Department, I've gone back to my previous job as a lawyer, where I now practice immigration law. My partner Mandy and I often encounter student visa applicant clients who have the same very common question. How do I explain my financial arrangements for my F-1 student visa interview? And so today I want to talk about finances. This is one of the three biggest considerations your visa officer will be thinking about during your student visa interview. And while the concept generally is pretty simple, you either have enough money or you don't, it can be very complicated and very difficult to explain your financial arrangements. So first, to start out, what are visa officers thinking about for your student visa? Well, number one, are you planning to go to the United States to study full-time and to maintain your status generally as a student? Number two, can you afford your education and related living expenses? And number three, are you going to leave the United States after you graduate and maybe after you conclude any sort of work experience like OPT or CPT? And so today, obviously, we're focused on consideration number two. Can you afford this education and your related living expenses? And so the first place I would look as a visa officer is at your I-20 form. This is the form that you get from the school that you've been accepted to, and it's a requirement throughout your visa journey. You have to bring this form to your visa interview. You also need to keep this form with you, not in your checked baggage, when you get to the United States. And then even while you're in the United States, this form will be one of the most important things that you should have in your possession virtually at all times. And so on that form, there is a box that explains how much money your school will cost, how much money your living expenses are likely to total, and then the money that you have to pay for everything. And so very basically, your visa officer will be wondering, do you have enough money to cover that total expense, your education and your living expenses together? And so that's the simple part. The complicated part is it's not enough just to say, yeah, I've got that money, no problem. As a visa officer, I wanted to know where that money came from. I wanted you to show me, not just tell me that you had enough money before I had enough confidence to say, okay, this applicant can afford their time in the United States. So let's talk about how to explain the arrangements that you've made financially to cover your expenses in the United States. I want to start with scholarships. Scholarships are probably the most important and the most positive detail that you can offer during your interview. But to be clear, there is no requirement and there is no expectation that you have a scholarship to qualify for a student visa. If you do have a scholarship, though, I recommend that you mention that as early as possible during your interview. This really accomplishes two main goals. First, it shows your visa officer that you can afford part or all of your tuition and living expenses, depending on the details around your scholarship. But second, it goes a long way to answering the first question. Are you going to the United States to study as a full-time student? Because think about what a scholarship actually means. A scholarship means that your university has done some due diligence. They've vetted you, and they've made a decision that they want you on their campus so badly that they're actually going to accept less money from you. Sometimes they're even going to pay you to attend their school in the form of living expenses. And so offering the details about your scholarship can go a long way towards helping you qualify for your student visa. But remember, scholarships are by no means required for you to get a visa. So number two, if you are planning to pay for part or all of your expenses yourself, you should volunteer those details. Again, it's never going to be sufficient to just say, I can pay for my education. The visa officer wants you to demonstrate how you're going to pay for that education. So think about bringing some bank statements or some other proof of the money that you have saved up. Now also consider explaining where that money came from. Maybe you've worked for a while, maybe your parents have been placing money into some sort of fund for you. Whatever that is, it again goes beyond just showing that you have enough money for your school and your living expenses. It also establishes that you have been making some arrangements, maybe for a long time, to invest in this opportunity in the United States, which can also help demonstrate that you are a credible student. One other thing to think about when you're talking about how you're going to pay for everything beyond just scholarships, and for example, if you're paying for everything yourself, is that there are some very, very restrictive measures in place for what students may do for work when they're in the United States. While you may be allowed to work in the United States, your opportunities will be very limited. And so visa officers are not likely to accept your response as, oh, I'm going to work while I'm in the United States, and that's how I'm going to pay for everything. This may be a common situation for many American students, but unfortunately, you will have to show that you've already made arrangements to cover the entirety of your tuition and your living expenses before you may qualify for a visa. Now, beyond self-funding, many international students rely on loans to pay for part or even all of their expenses. Now, a lot of people ask us this: if I take out a loan, will I still be able to qualify for my visa? The short answer is, of course you can. Many American students rely on loans to pay for their school. I did, and a lot of other people do too. However, loans have to be repaid. And so one big question your visa officer is likely to have is, okay, I understand you're taking out a loan here for whatever amount. What is your plan to repay your loan? So be sure to volunteer what you plan to do after you graduate. Maybe you have a position waiting for you at home. Maybe you expect a raise or a higher level salary once you get back home with this degree. Those types of details can go a long way towards establishing that you will be able to repay these loans, and the officer really has nothing to worry about. Now finally, sponsors, financial sponsors. Financial sponsors are incredibly common, especially for international students. And this is probably the most common question we get is, how do I explain my financial sponsors that are going to pay for my education in the United States? And this is where I would say more detail is better. So first of all, it is very common for parents to pay for their children's tuition in the United States. It is less common for maybe an uncle or an aunt or a family friend to pay for tuition. So whoever your sponsor is, or sponsors plural, whoever they are, your first detail should be to explain why they have offered to pay for your tuition. What is it in your relationship, again, maybe with your uncle, that has prompted them to say, I'm going to invest in your education and your living expenses because it's so important to me, maybe that you get this degree in the United States. And second, explain not only the fact that they can afford this, but how. Where does their money come from? Does it come from maybe investments, maybe a job? Maybe they work at a specific company with specific responsibilities. You should explain as many details as possible to demonstrate not only the fact that they can pay, but how they can pay. And that again will help convince your visa officer that you have made sufficient financial arrangements to cover the cost of your education in the United States. I recommend that you review our online comprehensive student visa guides available at zfvisaguides.com. My partner Mandy and I have taken all of our experience as visa officers and as practicing U.S. immigration attorneys to provide a complete end-to-end guide for student visa applicants to navigate through the interview and application process and hopefully find a successful outcome. We cover everything from the I-20 form to the DS-160, and of course, how to explain finances, complete with examples of good and bad interviews, so you can explain your situation with as much detail and honesty as possible. Now, if you still have questions, or if you would just maybe benefit from one-on-one support, or more crucially, if you have specific complications, like several previous denials, maybe a criminal issue, maybe you have extensive family members in the United States, then I might recommend that you schedule a one-on-one consultation with either Mandy or myself at our law firm's website. That is www.zfvisa.com. We'll meet with you one-on-one. We'll establish exactly what happened maybe previously. We'll learn a little bit about your current circumstances, and then we will provide specific guidance to help you move forward and again, hopefully obtain a favorable outcome. We look forward to helping you navigate through this process. We love working with international students because you bring a passion for your future, and you also contribute in a very profound way to the United States and to our universities and schools here. So we look forward to helping you. Please reach out if you have any questions, and best of luck in your process. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram to stay updated with tons of valuable resources and the latest updates about different US visas.